just southeast of Northfield.
And there's Lydia and the people on the farm here. They gave us permission to kind of walk around and just do some vlogging.
Okay, this is where I grew up till I was 13 years old. When I was 13, we moved to Wisconsin, Minnesota, about 30 miles south. In my background, you'll see the corn crib. That's original. And in between that corn crib, we had a corn sheller where you put in 1 ear at a time
Wow.
to shell corn
You go like
for
this?
feed.
Was it by
Oh, it
hand?
was run by power.
Okay. Okay.
But you'd put in 1 ear at a time, and out would come the cob. And the Peterson brothers, Fargrace Farms, bought the land. So it was about 150 acres of land and about 10 acres for the farm site. So the Petersons actually farm the land. The person that live here has a job in town, the people that live here. And apparently they like tractors
Yeah.
because there's lots of them.
There are.
My father was raised here, and their main thing was Holstein cows with his father, and they were known for good Holstein cows. Holstein cows are black and white, and they're mainly used for milk production.
That's what most of the dairy farms have had in the past, is Holsteins.
But there's other cattle raised for beef, not for milk.
Oh, so Holstein are the dairy cows.
The dairy cows.
And then there's other kind of cows
Yeah,
that are
you
the
got
beef.
Herefords, Black Angus.
Herefords
They're-
are red.
What?
Herefords are red with a little white curl up here.
Herefords?
They're grown
Hereford.
for meat. When I was growing up here, we would have two big white horses, strong guys, probably like a Belgium type horse, that we would use, especially in the wintertime, because the tractors couldn't go through the snow like the horses. So we spread the manure off of a hay rack type sleigh out in the field, so we had to haul it out there with the horses. My two brothers and I drove tractors at a really young age, under 10 years old, for different, like tilling the soil. It would always be a small tractor, so it wasn't too big for us. When we were growing up, we had 30 milk cows behind us in the barn that's not here anymore. Milk cows twice a day, and we helped milk cows, I'm guessing 10, 11 years old. Except you had to be careful because they could kick. And
Did you ever get kicked?
oh, it's got kicked several times.
Okay.
I've been kicked my whole life, really.
That ain't gonna go in.
I don't know. I might keep that in. Oh, we've all been kicked by one thing or another.
Yeah.
But there was plenty of work to do around the farm because it was actually more manual labor back then than it is now.
Yes.
Now you got modern equipment where the tractors and all the equipment will do most of the work. So back then it was a lot tougher life. I went to Northfield in elementary school. But when you come home, then you would go out and help Dad do whatever he was doing. It wasn't all, down in a downer to do the work because you made fun out of it. You learn how to work. That's why my whole family busted their ass and all did very well.
How do you really feel, Dad?
You learn work ethics growing up on a farm, and throughout your life you can never slow down because of what you learned when you were young.
They learned how to work because they had to, because it was a family corporation, more or less, right? I mean, you all had to work hard together.
Yeah, it was all a family working session, and then you didn't want your brother to outdo what you could do, so you just hung in there and did whatever you could. So it gave you a lot of satisfaction also.
What do we think? Look at all these tractors.
So this This barn has been replaced,
Oh my goodness.
and at one time they fed cattle here. And all barns, when you feed cattle, the south side is open, the north side is enclosed because of the north wind. So the cattle wouldn't freeze. Many farmers work together on farming. Like if you were haying one day, that's when you needed a lot of help, or harvesting corn. So the farmers would work together. Now they don't do that anymore. They work on their own.
That
Yeah.
woman, that wife, would be preparing meals to do cool drinks, even if it was just water with some ice cubes in it, to bring out mid-morning, and then lunch and then mid-afternoon.
See, when you harvested oats, grain, oats is what you ground up to make cattle feed. And whenever you thrashed, you had what they call a thrashing crew. Because it would take at least 6 people to keep the thrashing machine going, and to pick up the shocks, run them through the machine, pitch them off the wagon into the machine, and then you would blow straw out in a pile, and then you would take that to the barn and you'd use it for bedding for the cattle in the wintertime. And then the oats you would put in a grain bin, and then you would take the grain out of there when you ground feed for the cattle all winter long.
And the
So that was called the thrashing crew. Quite common back then.
And I remember your mom, my grandma, talking about after she had a baby, she was out feeding the threshing crew just hours after
Minutes.
giving,
Just what?
just hours after giving birth.
the bill.
Oh. Well, the main thing,
I'm only laughing because she would always tell me after I had a baby that I need to pretty much get up
Buck
and
up.
get going right away. I'm sure.
after lunch, she always had pie.
Homemade.
So all the thrashing crew, I think some of them came over to eat her food
I'm
because she
sure.
was a good
Oh yeah,
cook.
she was a
sure.
fantastic farm cook.
She
Oh
was.
my gosh.
I
And
have
then-
quite a reputation for my pies.
Yes,
But
you
guess
do.
where I got all the recipes? From
Yeah.
my mother-in-law.
Yep.
Well, after
Yes.
Melanie and I here, my sidekick,
Aw.
after a few years of being married, I finally talked her into accepting my mother's recipes,
Yeah.
and boy, did she turn into a good cook.
Yeah, your mom was
Because
fabulous.
because instead of learning how to cook when she was a kid, she was riding her bike around
Casson
Casson.
swimming pool.
She went up to
isn't
the
about me,
Casson swimming
people.
pool, and she wasn't learning how to cook.
This isn't about me. No, I didn't know how to cook. There's already 2 cooks in the kitchen. Let's go on to something
Oh,
else.
moving on, moving
In
on.
1952, we bought a McCormick combine to harvest soybeans, which was 2 rows at a time.
Wow. What do they do now?
Now they do about 30 rows at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
The advances
we-
in technology.
We bought that combine with Mose Fox, the farm just south of here. So we both used the combine, or my dad would run the combine for both farms. Since we co-owned it, I would drive the grain truck. Mose would take care of unloading and putting it into the grain bins. I remember having a 1-row corn picker. Now they do 12 rows at a time. So you graduated up to a self-propelled corn picker combine. So it would pick the corn and shell the corn, and then you'd unload it into a truck. Now they use semis which hold 1,000 bushels. A load, semi-load is 1,000 bushels. Back then it was probably 50 bushels we'd haul in a wagon. In fact, I've never seen a place with this many old tractors,
Yeah, this is cool.
especially Ford. People like to rebuild those.
I feel like a farmer. All right.
That's what you like to be, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know you and your 2 brothers worked really hard from a very young age and up to adulthood helping your dad. Did all the young farmer boys work that hard, or was part of the reason because your father was ill?
We probably had to do it when we were younger than normal because my father had asthma. Therefore, he would get sick on and off from asthma. then we would basically take over until he felt better.
Look at our friends, West Concord. Those girls work just as hard as any boy, on their farm, walking the beans and doing many different things.
What's
So-
walking the beans?
Walking the beans is pulling the corn out, pulling up the corn in the beans. And that corn would grow from the previous year's crop where the ear fell on the ground. And then the corns would grow, so you had to pull them out. Otherwise, the corn would get harvested in with the beans, and they would dock you if there was corn in the beans on the price per bushel.
Truck. I would love to have that truck.
Would you? No.
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
I would.
I don't
Yeah,
want anything
totally.
but my van.
Yeah, I'm so sick of vans.
Yeah.
And I've ridden those kind of trucks, and they're really, really fun.
Yeah.
Did you have a truck, anything like that?
Oh, sure, we had a pickup truck
Oh, yeah.
all those years.
Yeah, yeah.
That was his mom's.
That's what we hauled soybeans in, was the pickup truck, then haul it up to the farm here and then put it in a grain bin.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom did a lot of that hauling, didn't she?
She did it until we could do it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to have
She
a truck
probably
like
did
that.
it pregnant too, but she's
Yeah,
not here
she
to
probably
ask anymore.
she probably like drove it like 2 minutes after.
How old when you were start driving a car?
What?
Well, and if you were on a farm hauling stuff, you just drive anyway, whether you had a license or not, and nobody would bother you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I was younger than that, driving truck up and down the road from the field to the farm place.
Well-
Just a given thing, you can drive up and down the road if you're farming.
Okay.
Let's go back to horses.
We would take the team of horses and a sleigh down to the neighbors for Sunday lunch. If it was snowing or something, you'd just take the horses. And then you would also take the horse to pull a toboggan in the road ditch. So that's what form of entertainment back then.
That had to have been fun.
Typically, you'd have one kid on the horse, one or two or whatever, riding a toboggan. However many could hang on. The neighbor kids would all get together and do that in the wintertime. Did not have the clothing we got now or had for many years. So it wasn't the warmest thing. So you couldn't do it some days for long. You had to come in and warm up with hot chocolate. Well, back when I was, say, 10 years old, come home from church, and then you decide to go visit your relatives or something. Well, we didn't even have a telephone till I was about 8 years old. And then it was a party line, so there could be 10 people on a same line, all the neighbors.
So they could all listen to each other's conversations.
And our ring was 1.5 rings. So if somebody wanted to listen, they called it rubbernecking, and they just pick up the phone, which you could hear the click. So you had to be careful what you said. But
Because all the townspeople could hear you.
so
Or
you
some of
didn't
them.
tend to use the phone much for anything private back then. Go visiting our relatives or neighbors and just stop in because you couldn't talk to them very much. Like you can now, you all got a cell phone, you can talk or text anybody instantly.
FaceTime, Skype.
But nobody really visits much like we used to. You just get in the car and drive around, and if people were home, you'd stop in, especially relatives. And they would do the same at our place, hoping to get a piece of pie.
So on Sundays, your mom would always have a coffee cake or a pie or something made every Sunday.
Oh yeah. Most
And the
definitely.
coffee pot ready to rock and roll to
Right.
get
Yeah.
coffee on, right?
So, yes, that's correct. And also it was quite common to get visitors, which was a lot of fun.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because they'd worked hard all week and maybe not have seen many people all week, and this was a chance to. This is the way they socialized.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to take time off and go have fun on Sundays, because working 7 days a week can be a drag after a while.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I was never bored. If I needed something to do, I would go fix a piece of machinery. Didn't matter what it is, but I never got bored, and I liked doing all that stuff. So yes,
You still like that.
Yeah, he does.
You never get bored.
I
because
still
you-
like fixing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you were a happy boy. You weren't burdened by all the stuff you had to do. You were just used to it?
I was never burdened
No.
by work.
No. Especially as a kid. They did have a lot of fun. You had nice birthday parties your mom would make for you guys. We got pictures of them.
Yeah.
Cupcakes and all sorts of stuff. She loved her sons, let me tell you. She loved her boys. And of course, Eddie did too, his dad, but Eddie passed. Eddie was ill a lot.
He died 50 years ago from emphysema, from asthma and smoking Chesterfield cigarettes. Died at 51 years old.
And he was a lovely man.
All the farm kids grew up with a great work ethic. Consequently, we have a lot of industries and different businesses, companies that have come to Minnesota, the Minneapolis, St. Paul area to set up shop because a lot of the farm kids grow up and they can't all work the farm, so they have to go to the city, and so we got a lot of good employees, workers. And so do you want to talk about how you ended up in the cities?
Before that, I was working in Owatonna building fertilizer machines, and I was a painter, painted the equipment. Then I went to Sheldon in Northfield, so they built like Teflon products. Anyway, I started there as a drill press operator in the machine shop. The machining business, I kind of liked it because you're always making stuff, and everything you did was new products or development. But then I went in the Army. When I got out of the Army, I took a correspondence course on machining. So that's how I learned. Plus, when I went to Crenlo, there was an older fellow there, and I worked in night shifts. And he taught me tons of stuff about machining. So he was a great help.
Yeah.
Working nights, and I was getting sick of that. Plus, had about $3 to $4 left over every week after net pay and paying a car payment and rent. I decided to take the jump and go to the cities with my young bride here and work for American Machine for 7 years. Decided to start my own machine shop with a co-worker. So that's what I did for 30 years. And then I retired, sold the business and retired. A business is a way to financially do better, but plus you're doing a lot more than that by creating jobs and paying your income tax to keep the U.S. going. So it's a very satisfying thing when you can have your own business and make it profitable.
When Dad and I got married, I was right out of high school and he wasn't much older. We went on a honeymoon, but we stayed in his aunt and uncle's cabins in South Dakota. And well, we had $60 and that was from wedding gifts. And on our honeymoon, we had to mangle sheets, and that's how we paid for our rooms. But we've always been savers. We've always kind of lived below our means. Always figured we just don't need everything in the world, although it seems to others maybe we've had plenty, and we have. We've been very blessed with many opportunities in our life. But we're savers. I stayed home. I cooked the meals, I got the groceries, I had the gardens, I painted the walls, I did everything at that time when I had strength, which I love to do. So he was busy doing what he was busy doing, and I was busy doing what I was busy doing, and then of course we came together and did much of it together.
Well, when I was living on this farm, I remember my father saying, if you don't have money for straw for the cattle, they get no straw. So that stuck with me my whole life. So if you don't have money to buy something, you simply don't buy it.
Yeah, you don't finance
until you
it.
get the money.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of good paying jobs are machinists, plumbers, contractors, construction, hands-on jobs. These days are very well rewarded.
Oh, I will open